Welcome back, my Psychians. So, our next portion of social psych deals with social influence and how kind of the group dynamic works within, because we react differently within groups. Why do we conform? So, we're going to be talking about all of those topics within module 75 to 76 social influence. So, let's get started. So, first, we have to kind of know what social roles are, right? So, a social role in society, right? We're thinking nurture, is a socially defined pattern of behavior that are expected from a person in a given setting or group. So, for example, you could think of team sports, you can think of organizations, your jobs. We have these roles and there's these rules that we have to follow. And the roles you assume may result from your own interests or abilities. It could be, cultural rules, economical, any case, social roles are pretty much attached to our behavior by, making it obvious of what we should and shouldn't do and how to do so. So again, social rules are we know they're there, but they may not necessarily be written, right? So our social roles. And then we'll talk about Zimbardo later. So we also, on top of social roles, we have social norms. And social norms are a group's expectations regarding what is appropriate and acceptable for its members' attitudes and behaviors. So it can be broad guidelines like political or religious views, or it can be very specific, like, being quiet in a library, social norms of, being in a movie theater and not talking when the movie's on. So, it can guide conversation and what's kind of acceptable to discuss. It can help us define dress codes, when should we dress up versus dress down. These unwritten rules are built into these various situations. So, this leads us to a big vocab term of social psych. And a big vocab term of social psych is conformity. Okay. Let me turn on the light right here. Oh, good. A little bit now. Okay. It's getting a little dark. So, conformity is when we adjust our behavior or thinking to align with a group standard because of real or imagined pressure from a group. So, I want you to write in your notes the Solomon Asch classical line experiment. We will be watching this video in class during our brainstorms. So we will watch a video about how a group of boys, well, it just happened to be a group of boys, how they conform to say the wrong answer just because enough people were saying the wrong answer. So conformity within a group setting. So we will watch that for next time, but please write down the Solomon Asch classical line experiment. We'll go over conformity. So this was supposed to be like the college undie run, by the way. So conformity increases in situations that we see here. So people conform to other people's kind of idea sets or ideologies if a person is made to feel incompetent. So have you ever it's almost like like we conform because our superiors make us feel less than, and so we have to be a part of the group to feel like we're worth something, right? Another factor could be the group has at least 3 people, but it's not a huge crowd, so conformity is very strong with a small group of people. When the rest of the group is unanimous, and we'll talk about that. When a person has not made a prior commitment to any response. So, for example, say that Sally, Bobby, and Timmy want to go see a movie, and Sally and Bobby both want to go to different movies, and Timmy is like, oh, I really kind of want to watch like this one movie, but since I haven't told anyone what I want to watch, I'm going to go with the group majority, right? Because you're like, oh, I don't really want to rock the boat. I'm just going to go with the group majority, right? So especially if you haven't already made a prior response, you're more often to change your response. When group members are observing the person's behavior and along with culture encourages to respect social standards. So these bullet points increase conformity within people in groups, okay? And again, conformity, just to remind us, is us adjusting our behavior and thinking. okay, to align with the group. So reasons for conforming, there's two types, should I say. There is normative social influence and informational social influence. Normative influence is guided by the desire to gain approval or to avoid disapproval from a group. So, for example, in order, this is where you might hear of hazing, right? So maybe in order, be like, this is kind of stereotypical, but to join a frat or to join a sport, there could be hazing of freshmen where, they do these things to gain approval of the other members, right? Another example could be the way you dress. So, for example, when I was trying to fit in with my, how I was like a half jock, half kind of with this crowd that dresses nice and pretty-ish. I remember having to go to like Abercrombie and Fitch, Hollister, looking for all the cheap clothes that all of my pretty group would wear. And I remember always wanting to wear it so I would get approval or at least blend in with my group, right? So it's interesting how we dress ourselves. And usually we dress ourselves similar to our friend group. Very interesting. So just kind of think about that, my friends. And then we have informational social influence. And informational social influence is when we have influence resulting from one's willingness to accept the opinions about reality. So, for example, I'm going to say that again. Influences resulting from one's willingness to accept another person's reality. So, a really big example is, after 9/11 happened, a lot of people were not going on airplanes. And a lot of people accepted informational influence from other people to avoid airports or for example, my friends, people who believe that the world is ending and they're collecting things, they have this reality, and when you buy into that group's reality, that is called informational social influence. This could also, like an extreme example, a cult has a certain reality of the world which influences your ability to accept, like, so usually with the cult kind of ideology, you have to believe it to be a part of the group, right? So that would be informational social information, while normative is essentially just the desire to gain approval from the group. But informational social influence is resulting from our willingness to accept the other group's reality. Okay, the other group's reality. Okay, those are really important to know. So this leads us, so we have conformity, and conformity breeds compliance, which then breeds obedience. My friends, a lot of these slides are going to be skipping over the really cool video experiments, which we'll be watching during our brainstorm. So just kind of hang in there. There's going to be some really cool experiments that we'll see that show this conformity versus obedience. But essentially what this is, that behavior is contagious. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever tried, next time, maybe you can even try this in another classroom, maybe after hybrid or, after we're back. But I would guarantee, I don't know if you guys have tried this, but I have. If you have a couple students start to clap in a classroom randomly, other classmates will not know what's going on, but they'll join in because other people are doing it. Behavior is contagious. Okay. They don't know why they're clapping, but they're doing it because the group is doing it, right? So, modeled by one after another, we follow behaviors of others to conform. And again, it's a part of our basic social psychology of wanting to be a part of a group and people and to have our love and belonging, right? So, obedience. What is obedience? The change in behavior in response to a command that comes from someone in a position of authority. A change in behavior in response to the command of someone in a position of authority. So, for example, if I were to tell students, okay, please sit now. I mean, yes, that's obedience, but maybe to like a lower spectrum, but I come from a place of authority, right? So again, there's going to be some really cool experiments that we're going to see. So Stanford prison experiment, all that stuff. We will be going over conformity, authority, and obedience. So just hang in there, my friends. We're just kind of getting all the terminology right now. So what situations increase obedience? When the person giving the orders is close at hand and perceived to be a legitimate authority, like a police officer, a legitimate authority, not just like a captain of a team, right? But a legitimate authority. When the authority figure is associated with a prestigious institution. So, for example, you might listen to a judge who comes from a great institution, right? Listening to authority with, we kind of prestigious institution, we think of education kind of on that aspect. And when the victim is depersonalized or in another room. What I mean to be depersonalized is when you hear it a lot in kind of the serial killer realm. I know we're getting a little dark, but to depersonalize is to make someone feel not human. So to treat them like trash, to treat them like just another number, maybe in the jail system where we take everything away from them and then we strip them of all their identity. When we depersonalize someone, it is also easier to obey someone into maybe, it's easier when someone is in the other room when we're doing actions, so we don't have to face them head on. So that's another way that obedience can be increased. And we'll be seeing all of this in a few experiments we'll go over in the brainstorm, my friends. So just prepare yourself. Oh, it's going to be so good. So the last one is when no role models for disobeying the authority figure are there. So if no one is disobeying this authority, you are that much less likely to do so yourself. Okay. If no one's sticking up to someone who's an authority, who's maybe treating someone else bad, the likely chances of someone else sticking up is very low, very low. So now we're switching over to a vocab term called social facilitation. And for all of my sports people out there, this one is for you. And you don't even have to be in sports. It could be a presentation, but social facilitation is the vocab term for the tendency for weakness or strengths in a performance to be magnified when people are watching. So, for example, Steph Curry, who I do like to watch make those threes, his performance tends to be magnified when there is people watching. Or for example, when you're in your own sports game, you tend to play a lot harder when people are watching, when you have a crowd, right? But that also might, so if you're not as good as you think you are, you might mess up a little more, right? So it goes both ways. You could show your weaknesses or it can portray your strength. So the performer is physiologically more aroused when there is an audience presence. Performers most likely to respond is strengthened. So we tend to play harder during games because, again, people's eyes are on us, which kicks in our fight or flight. Better performance if performer is skilled or the task is easy, especially in front of a friendly audience. So home field advantage, we tend to feel more confident in trying more things, right? So home field advantage does have some advantages, my friends. But again, social facilitation. So think sports, my friends. It's always like a really great, easy sports connection. And then the last but not least, poor performance if the performer is poor or the task is hard. So again, if you haven't been practicing as much as you should be, this is also where our mistakes can be shown, okay? So our next term, my friends, I would like you guys to put right next to social loafing, group work. So let me tell you what social loafing is, my friends. It is less effort exerted by an individual if they are in a group setting, especially when the individual contributions are hard to separate from the whole. So, for example, people in a group feel less accountable for their actions. So, if you are assigned, so let me give you an example. Sally is assigned an individual project, just her and herself. She is the one who's turning it in. She's going to start working on it really hard, right? Because she is accountable. Let's say that Sally is in a group of 6 other people. Is Sally going to exert a little less attention because there's 5 more people at play that need to do it as well? Psychologically, it is shown through social loafing that people feel less accountable when they're in groups. And we all know how group work works. So we all know that there's one person that ends up having to wrangle people together, but people in a group worry less about what others think. So again, they also may view their contributions as like not that big of a deal if we don't have one section of a project, right? Unless, and like compared to being like you're the only one who's doing the project. So again, social loafing, less effort is exerted in a group setting than an individual setting per person. So fun fact, my friends, don't be a social loafer. So our next topic is a really, really interesting one. And I want you guys to put deindividuation, say that twice, deindividuation, and right next to it, I would like you to put riots. This is riot behavior, and it's called de-individuation, and it's when we have big groups of crowds together. So if you ever wonder to yourself, why do people act the way they do, and especially in big group settings? So for example, after the Super Bowl, the winning team's residents like climb up, like they like destroy their city. Like there's like things on fire. People are celebrating. People are climbing up like lamp poles. And you're like, what are people doing? Similar, the storm on the Capitol with the big riots. The bigger the group, my friends, the more anonymous a person becomes. So de-individuation happens in a group or a crowd setting. There is a diminished self-consciousness. So you are very not conscious of your own actions. So essentially, in a group setting, you are not as focused on yourself as an individual as more so as you blending in with the crowd. So that leads to the loss of normal restraints in your usual behavior if it was just you, compared to maybe it's just a few of you. It also leads to lower awareness of individual values because we are more likely to do these things when we are anonymous. So when we are in, I don't know if anyone's ever seen a riot, seen it on TV. My friends, there's a reason that really big crowds are really, really a scary thing. And that's why, police always get ready for, big Super Bowl games for both parties, the cities, because behavior after is very common and a big group of people can get out of hand very, very quickly. Okay, very, very quickly. And also, they're saying because of COVID and people wearing the masks, it's harder to identify people. So the more anonymous you are, the more likely risky behavior you will do, which is also why, when we see bank robbers or whatever, like they cover their face because it makes them anonymous. Okay, which makes them more dangerous, makes them willing to do things that they usually wouldn't do, right? This leads us to an aspect called groupthink, and it is one word. I did not forget the space bar, my friends. So groupthink results when groupthink results when group members try to maintain harmony in the decision making for the group. So I want you guys to highlight maintain harmony. That is the key buzzword. So instead, so a group that so let me read the definition again. So it is groupthink results when group members try to maintain harmony within a group to ignore conflicting evidence or opinions. So if you have a groupthink group kind of ideology, you're not going to speak up because you want to maintain harmony of the group. I don't know if you guys like some of my I don't know if you I don't okay. I have this guy group. Bless their souls. They just like the guy group, like if someone might be doing some risky behavior, I'm like, why aren't you saying anything? He's like, oh, he's la, they're fine. The boys want to maintain harmony in the group, so they don't want to challenge or call anyone out. So it's all about maintaining harmony. They don't examine a lot of alternative ways of doing things. They selectively gather information, pressure to conform within a group, pressure to withhold criticism so you don't want to speak up, and collective rationalization. Okay, so and here I am talking about cults, but I did do a few research papers. Groupthink also goes along with cult-like mentality because people who may lose their faith in the religion that they're following with the cult, they feel pressure not to speak up because they're going to ruin that harmony between the group, right? So an example is managers ignored an engineer's concerns about the dangers of launching the U.S. Space Shuttle Challenger after a night of freezing temperatures. Ended up exploding, my friends. So again, no one wanted to disturb the harmony of it. They wanted a great launch. They chose to ignore it. Okay. So kind of on this, on the lower end of this, we have behaviors in the presence of others. And so this leads to our term group polarization. And this enhances a group's attitude through a discussion. And if a group is like-minded, the discussion strengthens. It's essentially, it's like you have the same attitude. So essentially, like, it's almost like having a bunch of like educators in a room who might have all the same like-minded ideologies discussing, they're creating strength upon strength upon strength. Even though that could be a good thing, it also could be harmful because we are ignoring other sides of the spectrum, right? So like devil's advocate, right? So while I might believe in, I don't know, my friends, I might believe in, you guys, I don't know, something, right? Other people may not fully agree with me, right? So, or how about this? So like, I believe teachers should be paid more. And all my teacher groups are all in the same like-minded discussion, right? But there is also the other side, right? So it could be harmful, but group polarization is essentially enhancing your own ideologies within and attitudes within the group. So suggestibility is really, really, we see this a lot in high schoolers and adolescents, and it's called the chameleon effect. And as you guys grow up, we will all go through phases. So when I was growing up, I went through like the Abercrombie phase, the Hollister phase. I like went through like the hold the binder and not bring a backpack to school phase. And it's all because of the chameleon effect. We unconsciously try to mimic other people's expressions, postures, tones, behavior, because we want to fit in with the group. So for example, if your group has ever, like, I remember like when hydro flasks became a thing and everyone started getting hydro flasks, and I was like, ooh, like, I feel like I need a hydro flask because, like, I don't know, I want to mimic behavior and I, want to wear similar clothes or, whatever it could be. But it's called the chameleon effect because we like to blend in with our chosen group of people. So this could also be considered like trends, right? That you and your friends go through. Like right now, thrifting could be an aspect of the chameleon effect, right? It could be mimicking of the clothing, the aspects, right? Anything else you can think of. So again, suggestibility, it's called the chameleon effect, where people eagerly try to fit in with a group unconsciously by mimicking the members of the group. So if you ever spend a lot of time with your friend group, maybe you guys have certain phrases that other people don't understand. You start to conform and create your own little tiny little society. This is all a part of the chameleon effect. Okay, that is the end of the second video, and I'll meet you guys on for the third one.